Hello guys. You see data has been released about the exports of our country. Actually, it could have been better if the data is available for the entire financial year. That's from April 25 to March 26, but still we did not come until March. So export data is available for 3 quarters. Okay. Still it's better. We will try and understand the trends in exports of our country. When the final data comes for the entire financial year, then we will once again see this data. Then you will get a better picture. But however, the data is released, so we will take a look at the data and we will try and find out some trends that are there in our exports. Okay. So the highlights are there. We will come to the highlights a little bit later. First, we will see the data. Okay. Right. India's total exports, merchandise and services combined, you see in trade, both the merchandise is there and services are there. Generally, it's called as balance of trade or BOT and invisibles. You can call them as merchandise and services. That is trade in goods and services. So here we are talking about exports. So it is export of goods and services combined for January 2026. Okay, it is estimated at $80.45 billion. It's for the month of January 2026. Remember, okay, this registered a positive growth of 13.17% vis-a-vis the previous year, same month, January 2025. Total imports, if you see, both merchandise and services combined for January 2026, it stands at 83 billion dollars, slightly more than the $10 billion more than the exports. Okay, registering a positive growth of 18.76%. You see, one thing is growth in imports is more than the exports. Growth in exports is 13%, but growth in imports is 18%. So not just our imports are more than our exports, but they are growing at a higher rate. Okay, that is the catch here. You have to focus. Okay, we will see merchandise exports are $36.56 billion. Previous year, they were almost at the same level. Imports, if you see, $71 billion. Last year, they were little bit less, $59 billion. Services, exports are 43, imports are 19 this financial year. Total trade, if you see, $80.45 billion is exports, 90.83 is imports. Trade balance is $10.38 billion. Okay. Same month last year, it was $5 billion only trade deficit. It almost doubled to $10 billion this year. Okay, right. This is the details for the month of January. Okay, we are comparing month on month basis. Right. So same is represented in this bar chart also. Total trade during January 2026. Um, uh, January 26, exports were $80 billion, imports were $90.83 billion. Compare that to previous year, January month, exports were $71 billion, imports were $76 billion. Okay, so India's total exports during April, January, if you see this for these 9 months, okay, total 9 months from April 2025 to January 2026, this is a combined figure for 3 quarters. It is estimated at $720 billion, which also registered a positive growth of 6.15%. Total imports for the same time, you see, imports are standing at $823 billion, registering a growth of 6.54%. Here also, for if you see for the first 3 quarters, the growth in exports is a little bit higher than the growth in imports is little bit more than the growth of exports. So this trend you have to remember. Okay, however, there is not much difference in the growth rates. Okay, but because this figure is higher, absolute numbers when you see it, it will become much more bigger. Okay. However, for the three quarters, we will see mercantile. First, we will take exports are $366 billion. Imports are $649 billion. Then, if you see services, $354 billion. Exports, imports are $173.55 billion. You remember one thing, when it comes to services, our exports are higher than our imports. That is the catch here you have to take. We will take for the month of January also. Here you see services exports are far higher than the imports. Actually, they are more than double. Our service exports are more than almost double than our service imports. That is the catch here. Even for monthly data also, even for quarterly data also, and even for all the three quarters, if you see, our exports are far higher than our service exports are far higher than our service imports. So always we have advantage in services. Okay, but always we have problem in mercantile trade, that is trade in goods. We always face problem. It's also called as BOT, balance of trade. Okay, always we have problem, and to a great extent we are being saved by our service exports. Actually, these service exports are part of invisibles. That is there is a category that is invisibles. In that, service exports constitute a significant proportion. Okay, and these service exports are saving us. Okay, once again, these are the figures. We will see it in bar graph or bar chart. For April January period, the exports are $720 billion, imports are $823 billion. If you see the data for the previous financial year, same three quarters we are considering, imports or exports were $679 billion, imports were $772 billion. Okay, right. Then if you see mercantile exports during January 2026, they were $36 billion compared to $36.34 billion in the previous year January month. Actually, this data has come earlier also, so we need not go through this data. However, that is represented in the chart also. You can go through. Okay. Then mercantile exports during April January were also given. Okay, then mercantile imports, mercantile trade deficit, total balance of trade deficit, if you see, it stands at $283 billion for these three quarters. Okay, compared to the previous year, only the trade deficit was $247.38 only. So balance of trade, you see, in balance of trade always we have problem. For the three quarters, now the gap is $283 billion in this financial year. That figure you have to remember. Okay. Then some categorization wise also details have been shown. Non-petroleum and gems and jewelry exports in January 2026 were $30.47 billion. Why you have to categorize these products, non-petroleum and non-gems and jewelry exports? Because these petroleum exports or petroleum related exports and gems and jewelry, they constitute a significant proportion in our total exports. So we will see that. That's why we have to bifurcate for this category and for the rest of the categories. So if you exclude both of them, petroleum related and gems and jewelry, for the month of January, our exports stand at $30.47 billion only, compared to previous year $29 billion. Then if you see non-petroleum, non-gems and jewelry imports in the month of January, if you see, they stand at $42 billion compared to $41.53 billion in the previous year's January month. Okay, so non-petroleum exports stand at $32 billion. Non-petroleum imports stand at $53 billion. Okay. Then you combine them, non-petroleum and non-gems and jewelry exports, If you remove the gems and jewelry also, they just become $30 billion, and imports $42 billion. Okay, that is what is represented in this bar graph also. Okay, then the figures are given for 3 quarters. Okay, April to January 2025-26. Non-petroleum exports, they stand at $320 billion. Imports stand at $501 billion. Club them, non-petroleum and non-gems and jewelry exports, they stand at $297 billion. Imports stand at $414 billion. Okay. Then service trade, if you see, the estimated value of service export for January, just for January, stand at $43 billion. Service imports $19.6 billion. Okay, same is represented. Service exports $43.9 billion. Imports are $19.60 billion. For the same period in the previous year, the data is given. Okay, then if you see for the entire 3 quarters, the service exports stand at $354 billion, whereas the service imports stand at $173 billion. Here we have surplus of $180 billion. Okay, so the trade deficit that we had here, okay, where here $283 billion trade that we have in goods, deficit that we have in goods, that is filled by this surplus in services. That was the point I was making. Okay. Then if you see some data, important data, exports of other cereals, it shown an increase of 88.49%, coffee 36 increase is there, iron ore 31% decrease is there. Okay. All these things have recorded positive growth during the month of January. Okay, so you can remember what are the goods that have registered positive growth. In the first place comes the cereals. Okay, coffee, next coffee, then iron ore, then meat, dairy and poultry products, marine products, engineering goods, petroleum products, mica, coal and other ores, etc. All these have shown positive growth. Okay, then you see the things that have recorded negative trend during the January 2026 month are import of pulses. Okay, so earlier we were importing the pulses, now we are exporting the pulses. Newsprint, okay, negative growth of 29%. Chemical acha, means all these things there is decline in imports. Minus sign means there is decline in imports. So material and products 24% decline, iron and steel 18% decline, pulses 46% decline, newsprint 29% decline. Okay, coal, coke and briquettes, coal briquettes 16% decline, project goods 14% decline. So in these goods there is decline in imports. Okay, then some trends are also shown. We will see the trends. Services exports estimated to grow by 10.57% during April, January. This year, this April, January, 25-26 April, January compared to previous year, that is 24-25 April, January. Okay. Top 5 export destinations are in terms of change in value, exhibiting positive growth in January 2020-26 vis-a-vis January 2025 are United Arab Emirates, China, then Hong Kong, then Netherlands, and final one is Italy. Then top 5 export destinations, okay, in terms of change in value, exhibiting a positive growth in April to January 2025-26 vis-a-vis the same period last year. They are China 38%, USA 5.85%, United Arab Emirates 9.56%, Spain 48%, Hong Kong 30%. So you can see our major export destinations. We are exporting to these countries. Try to remember the names. That is more than sufficient. Okay. Then top 5 import sources, if you see in terms of change in value, exhibiting exhibiting growth in January 2026 is Switzerland. It is the number one number one country which is importing to us, or which is exporting to us, and we are importing from it. Switzerland, United Arab Emirates, China. Absolute numbers, if you see, it will be China, but we are talking about change in value. So that's why China is coming in the third place. USA and UK. So blindly you can say these are our major import destinations. From these countries we are importing. Then if the same thing you see for the 3 quarters, April to January quarter for 2025-26, in comparison to 2024-25, April to January quarters, in terms of change in value, People's Republic of China, second one is United Arab Emirates, third one is USA, fourth one is Hong Kong, and the fifth one is Singapore. Anyhow, these 5 countries are our major import sources also. China, USA, Hong Kong, Switzerland or Singapore, and Hong Kong. Okay. These are the top export destinations, the names I have mentioned. Okay. So this is some data you have to know about our trade, external trade. Okay. Don't worry, just try to remember the figures. When the data comes for the entire financial year, that is from April 2025 to March 2026, then we can have a very beautiful discussion. Much more things we can discuss and analyze. Okay, right. So this is it for today. See you next time. Until then, you have a very good time.